Okay. Before you guys come at me for being a total hypocrite, for telling you to stop using these words that I'm about to tell you, but I'm using them myself, let me put a quick disclaimer out there. I'm working on it. I really am. I'm trying to rephrase my wine description and wine terminology that I use myself to be more modern, to be more approachable, to be more non-snob, if you will, because I truly think that the only problem with these 10 words that I'm about to tell you is that they're just not very approachable. They're a little bit outdated, and honestly, sometimes they just miss the mark. But wine schools and sommeliers teach us to use those descriptors when describing wine. So is there anything particularly wrong with them? No, they're correct descriptors, but can we do better? I think so. So in this episode, I will tell you 10 words that I recommend for you to either stop using or start avoiding a little bit when describing wine. Hi everyone, and welcome back to my wine diary. If you are new to this channel and you like this video, by the end of it, please make sure to subscribe to see more videos of this kind. And if you're my returning subscriber, then thank you yet again for being here with me. When I created this channel years back, and when I created my Instagram page, which is also wine related, I always had this vision of making wine more approachable, making it simpler for people to understand and drink and order and not be intimidated by wine when they sit in front of a waiter or a waitress in a restaurant trying to order what they want. Unfortunately, the wine industry and the wine schools, they teach us these terms that are correct 100%, but they're just overly complicated in my opinion, and a lot of people don't understand them. So we tend to really use this terminology that the wine industry uses without thinking that newcomers to wine, they don't understand any of it, right? And it makes it just so much harder for them to enjoy wine or explain the wine that they like drinking to somebody else. So I'm all for simplifying the wine descriptors and the wine drinking process, but I wanted to tell you a story. And the story is entertaining, and I tell this to a lot of the people that I know. So there once was a man by the name Andrei Shelichev, and he was a Russian immigrant who worked and studied winemaking in France, and then he came to the US, to Napa Valley, to be exact. So Andrei Shelichev was once called the maestro of winemaking, and still to this day is considered to be probably the most influential person to the winemaking in Napa Valley. So a lot of people wanted to study under him back in the day, and a lot of his understudies would try to impress him and show him the knowledge that they gained from him as well. So they would taste wine pretty frequently together, and when describing the wine that they were tasting to Andrei, they would use all of these terms, the winemaking terms, right? The acidity and this and that. So all of the complicated wine terminology. And Andrei would always say, "Oh, listen to yourself. Would you drink that wine? I wouldn't." So he would make fun of them using all of these technical terms for a wine description. And the understudies were shocked. They were confused. They would say, "Well, how would you describe this wine?" So Andrei did it in a very interesting way, and I absolutely love it. So he once tried a Beaujolais, for example, and I quote, he said, "This wine tastes like a young woman barefoot with wind blowing in her hair, ruffling her blouse. She has the look on her face of an early peach, a teenage beauty." I am not calling for you to be describing everyone that you drink in this particular way, but you can see what exactly he meant by it. He wanted wine to be wanted, right? He wanted for wine to sound appealing and interesting. So he called for like this normal description of wines, something that people could relate to. An image that could be brought into somebody's head that would immediately resonate with them and say, "You know what? Yes, I actually think if I describe this wine as, a sunset in Greece, or I don't know, a sunset over the mountains in Tennessee somewhere, the soft wind blowing onto your skin, sun shining on your face in the summertime. Like, he always wanted for people to really feel that wine that they were drinking, and that's what he suggested to use as descriptors. So I thought that was a very interesting approach, and indeed he used that all the time. So that is the end of my long story for you, but let's take a look at 10 words that I strongly recommend you consider rephrasing when describing wine. The very first term that I think you need to rephrase or consider avoiding is the one that I'm guilty of, and I say it all the time, is the word smooth. Now, why I particularly have a bit of a problem with the word smooth when describing wine is because I honestly think it just doesn't provide much insight into the wine when you're tasting it. And although I like it because I understand what it means, I feel like it can be confusing to others. So instead, let's see how we can rephrase it. Instead of saying smooth for the wine that you're tasting, maybe try to describe the tannins. So maybe let's use soft tannins instead of smooth. Maybe let's say well balanced instead. So try to rephrase and use very sparingly the term smooth and describe it in some other ways. Wine term number 2 that I think you need to think about rephrasing or just avoid in general is the term legs or tears or arches, they're called sometimes. Now, I have a big issue with this one, to be honest with you, and I try to never, ever, ever use these terms, legs, tears, arches. So of course it refers to the streaks of, tears on a glass after you swirl the wine. Okay, so why I have a problem with this one is mostly because there's no substance to the wine description when we say tears or legs. All that those legs or tears indicate is really just the alcohol content and the sweetness, or the alcohol content and sugar content in that wine. Now, why would we be even describing those? Those are usually not the fine qualities that you want to be describing about a wine. It's alcohol content and the sugar content. So I think instead, use those terms for maybe more of an informal setting if you really want to. But remember that it really doesn't do anything to you describing the wine when you bring up the alcohol content and the sugar content in it. To the table. I mean, it's just kind of pointless to me to be talking about the legs and the tears. So that's the one I wouldn't even be rephrasing it really. Think about why you're even bringing this up. What context are you actually trying to bring up here? And consider just skipping that one at all, honestly, because it doesn't make you sound very smart, in my personal opinion. Comment down below if you disagree. All right, the next one is the one that I'm again 100% guilty of, and I use it a ton, and that's the word minerality. Oh, this is a sad one for me. I first of all just really like the word minerality, to be honest with you. It rolls, it sounds good, and it sounds very intelligent to me when I describe wine with minerality. And to me, again, I understand what it means. I get what minerality means when somebody describes wine with it, but I just feel like it could also be a little bit confusing. The term minerality is not very well defined, and for, again, people who are newcomers to wine drinking and to the wine world, that could confuse the heck out of them. So let's think about what are we actually describing here with the word minerality, or the wine has mineral qualities to it. Are we talking about the saline taste to wine? Are we talking about maybe some terroir descriptors, right? Maybe we can say how this wine tastes earthy. That's a little bit more approachable. People can kind of understand that. Not that people taste dirt all the time, but I think they kind of get the idea a little bit better. So maybe you can say something like, this wine tastes a little bit like stones, like earth, or, another good one is, a flinty taste to it. So something like steel, a little bit taste of steel when I taste this wine. So try to rephrase the word mineral a little bit. Again, it sounds great, but unfortunately just not very well defined. Okay, next one. Again, 100% guilty of myself, and I try to use it less every single time I taste wines, especially red wines. And that's the word bold. Bold is honestly a great wine descriptor in my opinion. Again, if you know what you're talking about, bold is great. But the problem with this one is that it just can mean so many different things. So here, I ask for you to try and be a little bit more specific. So instead of using bold, try to rephrase it and really narrow it down to what you're trying to say. So when saying bold, are you trying to say that it's high in tannins? Or are you trying to say that, say, that wine has a lot of very ripe fruit flavors to it? Or maybe are you saying that, you know, it's got some I don't know, full-bodied qualities to it. Like even the word full-bodied, honestly, is better than bold in my opinion. So all of those descriptors, very ripe fruits, high tannins, and the full-bodied wine, I think are much better than just bold. Next one up, I'm again the first one to come out and say that I am guilty of saying this one too, is oaky. Oaky, I say this all the time, you know, whether it's Chardonnay or some full-bodied red wines. Well, clearly we're referring to the wine being aged in oak barrels. Again, just a bit of a vague term, honestly. For those who've been drinking wine for a very long time, they know what oaky means, but try to be a little bit more specific. So again, I work on this myself all the time, and I try to really kind of dissect it and explain it a little bit better. So am I describing some hints of vanilla in this one? Am I describing some toasty flavors, like a toast with butter? Like so much easier, right, than oaky. Are you perhaps referring to some spice flavors, warm spices? People know that because people have had desserts before, so they know what warm spices are. Or maybe are you talking about, say, leather taste? So say something like, imagine biting on a piece of leather, and that's how this wine tastes. So have fun with it. Honestly, there's so much fun to be had with describing oak specifically. The next term, or actually two separate terms, are the ones that I love dearly. And I use them very sparingly because I understand that most people just don't know what those mean. And that's New World versus Old World. I have a separate video on Old World versus New World on my channel, so I'll link it up here for you guys, so check it out. But I mean, generally speaking, it's just describing wines from the continental Europe, which is the Old World, versus the rest of the world, which is the New World. But people don't know that. Most people don't know that. So for us to be using the Old World versus New World descriptors, you know, again, you may sound a little bit snooty, a little snobby, wine snobby, right? And we don't want that. So try to be more specific. You know, again, are you pointing out maybe some great terroir qualities, those earthy qualities of the wine? Maybe again, those ripe fruit flavors, whatever it is you're trying to describe. Look at your audience, read the audience, and see who you're describing this wine to. If it's a sommelier or restaurant, they'll probably get the Old World or New World descriptor. But if you're just talking to your friends, don't come through as a wine snob using those, and just choose something simpler instead. Next one is the one I have a big issue with personally, and I don't think I've ever even used this one, and I don't think I'm planning on using these terms either. So here, I'm talking about the biodynamic term or natural term. You know, it is just, again, if you use it loosely, it's just way too pretentious, for the lack of a better word. I'm sorry, for those of you guys who like using biodynamic or natural as wine descriptors, I just don't. I think they just sound pretentious in my opinion. So here again, read your audience. You know, what is the goal in you saying this wine is biodynamic? Are you trying to point out how, I don't know, say it was made with minimal intervention, perhaps? Great, say that. People will understand it better. Or say, you know, that maybe it's, again, those earthy qualities, the terroir qualities really come through much better on this wine. Or in this wine. I think those are just much better descriptors. Biodynamic and natural are just, again, snooty terms that people don't understand, and honestly, they don't even give us much substance. You know, that could mean a lot of things. So be specific and try to avoid those two. Okay, the next one I've used quite a few times when describing big, bold, full-bodied red wines, but I try to stay away from it, is the word jammy. I actually don't like the word jammy. I don't know why, it just doesn't sound really cool to me, but yeah, I've used it before. And the word jammy, I think, if used loosely, can really indicate the opposite of what people may think it means. So they may think that it's actually very sweet, which is not what we're trying to describe here, right? So try to instead describe the ripe fruit flavors, maybe the full body of this wine, instead of just using jammy. I think it can be a little bit confusing. Instead of getting into a rabbit hole of explaining to you why I don't prefer the next two terms, I'll just say, go ahead and rephrase the terms feminine and masculine when describing wine. Gender descriptors like these just can be very confusing in the nowadays world, so I think you're better off trying to describe a wine as perhaps elegant or maybe robust and powerful, perhaps. So whatever you're trying to say, just stay away from feminine and masculine. Just my advice. The last wine word or wine descriptor that I'm bringing up to you guys is the one that I use a lot, and I am consciously trying to step away from using it so much. And the word is bouquet. Now, bouquet is actually, nothing's wrong with bouquet, it's a total fine word. It's actually pretty, in my opinion. It's just old-fashioned. I feel like it's just a little outdated, and again, you can just come off as a little snooty when using the word bouquet. Although, again, I'm a fan of it, but I try to now use the words like aromas and even nose way more than the word bouquet. Sad tears, I like that word a lot. Just trying to be more modern, I'm going to finish this video with words of encouragement for you guys to try and describe wine in an approachable, fun way next time you have some. So for example, me drinking this wine right here, I'm gonna improvise, so don't judge me, but this is a white wine from Greece, and it's delicious, it's so refreshing. So when I drink this wine, I think of just a hot summer day, coming out of the ocean and walking on very hot sand, lying down on the beach, on a recliner, and just sunbathing while my skin is still covered in the ocean water. Something like that. I mean, it's fun, and most people can relate to an image like that. They immediately think of something refreshing, taking a sip of, chilled white wine on a hot summer day. I think that's kind of fun. So think about something like that. Give me an example of your fun and approachable wine description down in the comments. Just please keep it appropriate always. And until next time, cheers everyone.